It's time to talk college basketball once again and for the last time here on Prime Sports Network for the 2022. Actually, it's the 2021 season. And we'll maybe, I doubt, talk basketball, college basketball again this calendar year because we talk about it every year. It really only makes sense to dive into college basketball when the calendar turns and you get into January and you start getting into conference games and things of that nature. But the bottom line is this is going to be our last talk of college basketball for quite some time. So we're going to try to do whatever we can here in the next few minutes to set you up for the Final Four. Marc Lawrence, of course, joining me from playbooksports.com. And Marc, even though we don't talk a lot of basketball, especially college basketball on this channel, you know, a lot of that has to do with the fact that, as I just said, you can be a fan. You want to watch every game all season long or all the teams. That's great. More power to you. That's great. From our perspective and from mine, and I don't want to speak for you, when you're talking about who's going to win championships, you know, how far you're going to go in the tournament, you know, upsets, things of that nature, because really everybody cares about the tournament and the brackets. That's what really drives you and drives us in this industry more than anything else. And I think we did a hell of a job. And obviously your newsletter kicked it once again because you have your 8 elements, your playbook 8 elements, and there are still 2 teams left and they're playing in opposite games, and they could end up playing in the national championship game.
Yeah, we're rooting for that, Greg, to say the least. If we can get both of those 2 teams to win this weekend and meet Monday night, then that will then have produced the winner of this tournament 19 of the last 20 years. So obviously our fingers are crossed that way, and that's probably likely the sides we're going to be leaning to, if for no other reason, because we have that to support our plays in those particular basketball games.
And I guess it's, you know, obviously it's good that it's they're on the opposite sides. You know, sometimes
Correct.
it's better when you're on the same side because you guarantee one team in the championship game. But this is still a good way of looking at it. And was it UConn, the only team that didn't
Yes, it was.
work in
It was
that?
UConn in that magical run that they had when they swept the Big East in 4 games in 4 days, and then swept the NCAA tournament, winning and covering 10 straight games. So that was quite a season for UConn, to say the least.
What year was that?
I believe it was 2009, maybe.
So even though they were a surprise, then they were a top 3 seed.
They were not a seed that was a 1 or a 2, exactly right. So they were a 3 or worse. But that's what they did, is they surprised in the Big East Conference to win that in surprising fashion.
And that probably put them into like a 3 seed, and then they still were, because because they were a late kind of to the party team. Still, it was all right. You made a nice run. You won a big tournament, and it gives you credibility. Like I said, maybe they were a 3 seed, but winning a national championship is a completely different story. And I only bring that up a couple of reasons. One, because the last team, if you have North Carolina, the last team to win that was a 4 seed, okay, or higher or lower, depending on which way we want to go. So 4, 5, 6, and up, was Arizona in 1997, and they were a 4 seed. So that, as you know, we always want to talk about Cinderellas and bracket busters and how great college basketball is because anything can happen on any day. But that just shows you when it comes down to it, the cream usually rises to the top as far as championships are concerned.
Yeah, especially in tournaments of this magnitude. You mentioned Arizona, that 1997 win. That was the last time a team from the West Coast won this tournament. I mean, that's saying a lot. The West Coast Pac-12 conference is suffering both in basketball and football these days. And I don't know if it's because they don't recruit the quality athlete like they do back east. I don't
Even
know
though that's changing.
How is that?
Well, from what I've heard, the recruiting is starting to get a little bit better.
Okay.
UCLA, we know they're getting better. Arizona, of course, had a great year this year, and they're very young, so they should be up there again next year. So it is starting to, and maybe that has a lot to do with the transfer portal as well, because now, hey, I'd rather just fly out west for a year and play for a West Coast team instead of being on the bench for an East Coast team.
Yeah, listen to the Beach Boys music out west.
Yeah,
Exactly
it's like
right.
a party for 1 year.
Yeah,
I go out there for a
exactly.
year and have fun. Yeah, maybe smoke some weed on the beach. Like Jim Morrison. Okay, so some trends that stayed true, and these were trends we talked about in our first show to kick off the bracket. For the 17th time since 1979, only one seed made it to the Final Four. So again, every year it's either a one or it's either one or two one seeds, and we talked about it in our last show that we both agreed that it was more than likely going to be just one seed, and that one seed was going to be Kansas.
That was 2017, I believe you said, when all 4 one seeds won, correct? Or went to the Final Four.
Yeah, I don't. Was it? Is that what you have? Is that what I said?
Well, the only reason I'm bringing this up is when I was a contributor at VegasInsiders.com, every year they would ask to make projections for the brackets, and my bracket projection that year just happened to be the 4 number 1 seeds, which is very chalky. And I don't.
Who was that with?
At Vegas Insider.
2008.
Oh, 2008. Okay.
Yeah.
And I did that, and it ended up being those 4 number 1 seeds, which is uncharacteristic. Okay, but it worked out
for you. Yeah.
For whatever reason. It didn't work out with me at Vegas Insider.
Oh, it did?
I'm no longer
Okay.
there. But it worked out for those 4 teams.
Yeah. Well. Okay, and then a 7 seed or higher has reached the Final Four now in 8 of the last 9 years, with North Carolina getting there. And that's what I felt when we talked again last week about North Carolina, and because UCLA was my pick, but I just felt there's something about this Tar Heel team. And sure enough, look, they won 2 games. It's not like they won 4, 6 or 8 in this tournament, but they have won 4, but they are in a position right now where they have a 25% chance basically to win a national championship. And I just think they have everything going for them. And maybe they could be one of those UConn teams that does, burst that type of trend that we just talked about, because of the fact it's almost like the Steve Fisher deal. You get this coach that's never been in a tournament before. He takes over for a legend. It's almost like it's an incredible story, really, when you think about it. It's like Hollywood could not come up with this, where you have a coach that has taken over a legend at North Carolina. It's his first tournament, and he's on one side. And on the other side, you got Coach K, the legendary Coach K. And they're both facing each other. And it just happens to be the biggest rivalry in college basketball. And I couldn't even believe it when I heard that it's the first time that these 2 teams have ever played in the tournament before. I can't even believe that.
Yeah, that's an absolutely amazing stat, that they've never met before in this tournament. For as good as they've been, and as many paths as they've been down, it's unbelievable. It just sets this game up even more to a larger degree.
Unreal, yes. It's just a monster game.
The only thing I'll say about North Carolina being on this unreal Steve Fisher-like run is the fact that they didn't win the ACC tournament. Virginia Tech pulled the surprise there in doing just that. Hubert Davis has done a terrific job. He's a former NC basketball player, and tip of the hat to him. They had a really rocky start for the start of this basketball season. And in fact, if you looked at the Ken Pom ratings, they were really outside of the top 75 for the longest time.
Sure.
Yeah. So they're really kind of coming to their own here of late February-ish, and playing some pretty good basketball right now. So tip of the hat to Hubert Davis. He's done a real nice job.
Yeah, and what it is when you have a team that has the type of firepower they have, and you're playing like these 2-game tournaments is basically what's going on here. You're playing 3, you hope to play 3 2-game tournaments. And when you have that type of firepower where one of 3 guys can go out there and score 30 points in a game, it makes things a lot easier for the rest of the team. And that's really what you're seeing right now. For Duke, meanwhile, we talked about it also, is that you have a team that, like against Michigan State, they could have folded, or it looked like Michigan State had them. It looked like Texas Tech had them. But then all of a sudden, you could just kind of tell, especially in their previous matchup to get into the Final Four, that this team they were too close to the Final Four with Coach K in his final season, that they weren't going to get it done. Now the question is, in my mind, I think it's about this game. I really do. I can't see Duke in his last year, his last game, getting to the championship game and losing. I just can't see it. I think if they lose to North Carolina. But if they get to the championship game against, say, Kansas, as much as I like Kansas, I'll be picking Duke.
It's almost like, and you don't want to say this or you really don't want to believe this, but if Duke does make it to that championship game and they're playing Kansas or Villanova, you get the feeling that the players in the other team are as much in awe about Duke being there in this situation than anybody else, and they may end up falling prey to that themselves. So that could work.
Which may be an advantage, though, for North Carolina in the semifinal as opposed to Kansas or Villanova in the championship game, because North Carolina is not going to be in awe about anything going on with Duke.
No, they're not. They're playing with house money, really, right now. Number 8 seed and all those good things.
And it's their rival. And they just hate them, and they don't want to see Coach K doing anything on their run and their time. Yeah. So that it would, but I could see what you're saying. If it's Villanova, Kansas, it's his last game, it's the pageantry and all that. I could see that maybe there'd be a little bit, jitters, if you want to call it, from the opposition if Duke reaches the championship game. Yeah,
they could be awestruck, and I'm not saying they're going to lay down, but what I'm saying is they might not be at their peak, what you might call a biorhythm type situation going into that basketball game. Getting caught up in the moment is what I think could end up happening to whoever plays Duke.
Yeah, it's like you wind up, like, instead of being focused 100% on what's happening in the game, you're a little distracted mentally about, hey, I just ran past Coach K.
Yep.
That kind of thing.
So, he shook my hand,
Yeah. You should probably do that. Shake a lot of hands if he gets the championship game. Hey, good luck tonight, kiddo. Yeah. And the other thing, too, that which is, and I said this again last week, and why I'm picking North Carolina to beat Duke, one of the other reasons is almost like Arizona. Not as young, but almost. This is still a very young Duke team. And to ask these kids to do what they're doing so far it's been great. And maybe they're just going to be a team of destiny. It's very possible. But let's just keep that in mind. They have 5 of their top 6 players are underclassmen, and 3 of them, I believe, are freshmen. And now they've got this. Hey, and they can and getting to the Final Four is nowhere near as difficult media-wise and the world is watching us wise as the Final Four. It's a completely different type of situation. Because the Final Four is like the Super Bowl. They know everybody's watching you. Where when you're playing these other games, even in the Elite Eight, there's another Elite Eight game going on or just finished, and other people are, doing other things, and you basically just came out of a Sweet 16, 48 hours ago, and now you're playing. So here you got the whole week to get ready. You got all the media. You're going to be in this super dome. I mean, you're going to look and you walk into this place. It's going to be, I don't know how many fans are going to be in there. I mean, 100,000. I got no idea. I don't know how much they can fill in there. Probably like 70,000. But it's a completely different situation.
Yeah, they could be in awe as well, just because of the environment. There's no question. You mentioned about Duke being as young as they are. I'll say this, that it didn't really impede John Calipari in Kentucky and his one-and-done kids and that clan that he had forever. I mean, he took almost teams that were almost all freshmen.
He seemed to do that every year for a while. Yeah,
exactly right. And, he won because of talent. That's the reason he won. Sure. And he's a good coach, but he won because of talent. Hmm. And so if you got talented kids that are 3 freshmen and 2 sophomores, are they any worse off than 5 teams or 5 players made up of juniors and seniors that aren't quite as good? You know what I mean? Give me the talent. You know what I mean?
And we talked about this last week. I think the only difference for me and I was referencing Arizona. The difference for me is this year is so much different than any other year because you had these super seniors, if you want to call them, and we could even have some of that next year. And they're going to be guys that could be, could be eligible for like 6, 7 seasons. I don't even know how long they've got going on next season. I know Caleb McConnell can go back to Rutgers next season again if he wants to. Even Harper, we talked about him. He could actually come back to Rutgers again next year. So that's why I think there's a little bit difference this year when you've got not only these players who were considered juniors or seniors, but how long have they actually been around? I mean, have they been around campus for 3 or 4 years longer on average than these kids from Duke? Possible.
Possible, exactly right. And this super senior card that they're playing, much the same as in college football, ends up making the teams that much deeper.
Yes.
And if the players do elect to stay around, a lot of them did. We saw in college football last year, and they were largely seniors who did come back. But they've got this opportunity now. If they were a sophomore, they're still allowed an extra year. If they were a junior, they're right. So we're going to see this perpetuate here probably for another, it's going to probably last for 6 or 7 years as long as that would have stretched out. So it's going to end up meaning we're going to see some pretty good college basketball here coming up, not only in this tournament here, but in the next few years.
And that's good for us as fans.
Yes, it is.
Because the whole thing of one and dones and two and dones, it's just not good basketball. And I think the basketball we've seen this year has been pretty good compared to recent years. So.
It reminds me, Greg, of the most hypocritical thing that I can recall seeing in the world of basketball is at the Cavs game, and I told you this before, I used to have some real nice seats on the floor right at the free throw line. They're just beautiful. And before the players would sit in their seats, when coming out of the locker room, those seats they had on the back covers there was advertising or messages, and there was a campaign going on in the NBA saying "Stay in school." Well, they're telling kids to stay in school when they're rating these kids that were one and dones in college. I mean, what sort of a message was that? It was speaking out of both sides of their mouth. I just had to say that,
which is surprising for the NBA.
Yes.
Okay. As far as this matchup, the top trend I noticed that to keep an eye on, it wasn't a series trend. It's just keep in mind that North Carolina, they're on this run right now. And some of it has to do with the fact that they have been outplaying what Vegas has believed that they are capable of lately. They've won 4 straight overall as a dog. So four straight upsets. So they're going to try to make it 5 in a row. And they would more than likely, of course, have to make it 6 in a row if they win the national championship. As far as the matchup with Duke, they have won 7 out of 12, including the win over Duke in Coach K's final game at home. And you do wonder whether or not there is a little bit of psychological advantage for Duke in their, because I would think that it can't be any worse than it would have been if Duke had blown out North Carolina. So I have to believe that there's a little bit of, especially for these players, for Duke, like they let their coach down. And now we get a second chance, and we're not going to, especially against that team, and we're not going to let this go. We're not going to let them not only knock him out of his final game, but final game ever.
Well, it's good on paper going in a game plan like that. And you can also rest assured that Coach K would much rather have his team playing with this big revenge chip as opposed to going into this revenge factor in a game like this. He can motivate his players a lot more easily doing something here just like that. And he can also take comfort in knowing that his team is on a real nice run right now. They're 15-2 in their last 17 basketball games. And that's the reason. I'm not going to say that's the reason, but it was surprising to me that they were installed as the favorite to win the Final Four when the Final Four was all put together ahead of Kansas, okay, because of the Coach K cutting down the nets in his final game.
Yep. And again, it could happen. Kansas Villanova. So now I haven't even checked, but this is interesting. I was just thought about this. Is the Duke North Carolina game the second game?
I believe it's the second game.
Okay.
Yes.
Because normally, anytime an 8 seed is playing in the Final Four like that, That's the first game. And then the two top seeded teams are the prime. But there's just no way they can have Duke and North Carolina as the first game.
No, no, you're not going to have Tom Brady playing his last game at 1 o'clock in the National Football League. Okay.
So yeah, so that makes sense. So you got this Kansas Villanova game, and unfortunately for Villanova, the kid Justin Moore gets hurt, and that's just the wrong time because they are not a deep team. Matter of fact, they now only have 5 players on the team that average more than 2 points a game. And yes, they can play defense and all that. But when you have to go up against the only number 1 seed left in the tournament, I think that's just asking a little too much for Villanova.
I agree. Now, usually, we'll make cases, especially in football, when a star player goes down, the team rallies around, okay, and plays a really good game, the first game thereafter. And that could end up being the case for Villanova in a contest like this. But my biggest concern is what you laid out, the fact that they are not deep. They're only a 6-man rotation type basketball team to begin with. So you're not going to rely too heavily on the bench to replace a player like that. So
not now.
No.
These kids might have to play the entire game.
They might end up having to do just that. Yeah. Now, it's still a Jay Wright coach basketball team, so they're going to end up with a game plan that's going to probably surprise a lot of people. But I still don't feel comfortable with that injury occurring to a team like Villanova, as shorthanded as they're going to be.
And look, we also realize that as good as a coach Jay Wright is, when he then has to go up against teams that have just as much and usually more talent than he has at this stage of the tournament, then things kind of even out, because in the tournament he's 34-13 straight up overall, but he's just 4-4 against top seeds, so he's just 50-50. And now he's got to play without one of his top players, and a number 1 seed. So I just think Bill Self is every bit as good as a coach as Jay Wright is. I just can't see it unless it's a one and done tourney. So anything can happen if Kansas isn't shooting well, and that's how Villanova wins the game. More than likely is they play really good defense, and Kansas just doesn't knock down their shots.
Well, I think that's what Jay Wright's going to hopefully rely on, is good defense out of Villanova. And I'll throw this number at you. This is pretty surprising. If you go back to 2005, in Final Four basketball games, there have only been 5 of them that have played to a total of more than 150 combined points. So you've got in this basketball game a total of 151 points against 2 very good defensive basketball units here. And if Jay Wright decides, I don't want to be going up and down the floor against this Kansas basketball team, we've got to take the air out and strap the defense on here, this could be a nice looking underplay in Kansas and Villanova.
Yeah, I've said before, I'm not a total guy, but if ever there was going to be a game where you would think Villanova would be held to less than 60, I could see that here. I don't know how they're going to score. I just don't.
Well, they just scored 50 their last game with the kid.
Yeah. So there you go. What is the total?
151.
That's surprising, isn't it?
It is, and I'm expecting we'll see something in the high 140s by the time the game tips off.
Yeah, that's surprising. Okay, meanwhile, and everybody's talking about Kansas, and they've had an easy road. But look, we said that before the tournament began, that it was an easy bracket, and they should get there. So there's no surprises there. But still, they're taking care of business. And one of the assets they have that no other team has is they've got the bench dude in Remy Martin, and here's a guy that statistically hasn't had a great year. He's been good, but he hasn't been great. But this is why he's here for now, for the tournament. And he goes out there and he starts by getting 15 against Texas Southern, then 20 against Creighton, then 23 against Providence. So he just keeps coming up big for Kansas. And if Kansas wins the championship, he's going to be a major reason why.
Well, here's another, and I like that play real well. I want to say a play. I'm talking about a prop on Remy Martin to be the MVP.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean,
odds should be good.
I've heard 18-1 to 15-1. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So you bring a player in off a bench who's a 6th player that can possibly lead the team in scoring and does just that to get his team to the promised land. That's a strong case to make for a most valuable player and a lot of value at 15 or 18-1.
I like it. All right. So best of luck on the playbook. 8 elements. Duke and Kansas trying to make it 20 out of 21, correct?
19 out of 20. We were 18,
Oh,
18 to
okay.
1
Trying to
coming in.
make it 19 out of 20.
Yes,
Okay.
trying. Yes, right.
So we'll see how that goes. And once the college basketball season's over on Monday, it's wall-to-wall playbook, football guide, and you're just going to be in the laboratory, and your wife's going to not see you until the end of July.
She's going to put food at the door and knock on the door and tell me there's some food out there if you're hungry.
Yeah. We'll talk football, a lot of football between now and then, because I'm going to try to take advantage as much as I can, because you're going to be doing all this research, and so your brain is going to have all the, because I know, I mean, I just finished the draft guide for 11 teams, and my
There you
head
go.
is like, all right, ask me anything you want. If
Yep.
there's 11 teams, I'll tell you.
Hit on
So,
any one of these 11 teams.
yeah, tell me, I know.
Yep.
So I'm going to try to pick your brain for the next few months, and we'll promote the guide along the way, and we'll have fun talking college and pro football during the month. That not a lot of, well, I know we know people will do whatever they can to talk, but we've got some really good information that we're going to provide people. So don't go away once the college basketball season ends.
So in closing, are you at liberty to tell me who you feel will be the number one pick in the NFL draft, or do we have to wait for our lads to produce that?
I still think it's, I said it a week or two ago, I think it's Hutchinson. I think they're leaning towards defense. So I think it's going to be Hutchinson.
So they'll deny Detroit the opportunity to bring the hometown kid to Detroit.
Yes. And then once number 2 goes, anything can happen.
Yes.
And not that Jacksonville can't take an offensive lineman, because there's definitely, it's a Hutchinson or it's a tackle. Either the kid from North Carolina State or Neal. So I think they're down to 3 guys basically. But it looks like Hutchinson might be the guy that they're leaning towards. And of course, we want to let everybody know to go to patreon.com/PrimeSN. And by doing that, so what you could do first is you can actually go to playbooksports.com. And if you're looking for a package, and that includes the 2023 college basketball package. So we already have the 2023 college basketball package available at 20% discount. And this football season's package. So we can have either or combined. You go to the playbooksports.com website, you check out the prices, and you go, oh, okay, maybe I'm interested in this. But if you go ahead and you just pay for a simple tier, it could be $5, $10, all of a sudden you start getting these discounts of like 20% on the basketball packages, on the football packages. So, I mean, it's a no-brainer if you're interested in signing up either way, especially if you're just looking to hook up for this football season, which is going to be what I would guess. You tell me. When do people start purchasing college basketball again? College basketball period for 2023.
You're talking about services or newsletters or
newsletters?
They usually wait until the season begins.
Okay, just newsletters. Okay.
Nothing in advance like football. Okay.
What comes? Does anything come in advance in basketball?
No.
No. Okay. Just football.
No, just football.
Okay. Well, we have either or. Okay.
But I have to say, that's a great eligibility bonus. You mentioned about the tiers. For $5 or $10, all of a sudden you're eligible to get these nice
20%.
discounts. That's an awesome plan.
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
And by the way, just keep in mind too, and I'm going to try to do a better job of stressing this as well, is that this money is really, we're trying to build up some additional capital for the channel so we can put it back into the channel and really produce even better programs. Like, for instance, I haven't told you this yet, but John Hardoon, his horse, runs on Saturday. So he's going to be running at Turfway, Champagne Poetry. So if Champagne Poetry wins or finishes in the money, he's going to have the opportunity to race in the Kentucky Oaks. So
real nice.
Chad Summers, who does the horse racing show with me on Mondays, said if Champagne Poetry goes to the Kentucky Oaks, he says, we are going to do live horse racing coverage from the Kentucky Derby.
Awesome.
I was like, oh, all right. I'm going to hold him to it.
Well, that's when I'll hop back on, Greg, okay?
Hey, I'm part of this crew too,
I understand.
So anyway, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and be rooting for Champagne Poetry on Saturday. But anyway, the bottom line is these are the types of things. I mean, Eric Smith, who does our motorsports, I mean, he's going to be at the Indy 500 all week, live coverage. He was at Daytona for live coverage. Jan Stevenson, Hall of Famer. She's going to be doing a whole lot of things on site as well. Obviously, you're going to have to get your butt out there and do some live. When's your next live show on premises somewhere? You actually should have been doing something this week at the Florida Derby.
Other than at my office, a live presence, probably when I go to Las Vegas in August to sign up for the Superbook contest. That's a nice week that I take to go out there and have a good time catching up. Yes,
so
right.
You'll have to make sure that we get you at a sports book.
Cool. I'll make that arrangement happen.
Looking forward to it. Mark, appreciate it. We'll talk to you again when we talk football in the coming weeks.
I look forward to that, Greg. Be well, stay safe, enjoy the games.